Imagine standing in a place where the very dust beneath your boots feels like it carries the echoes of a million years of history and the silent roar of untamed wilderness. Most people look at a map of the world and see a continent, but when you actually set foot on the soil of Africa, you realize you aren't just visiting a geographic location, you are stepping into the actual heartbeat of the planet. Today we are going on a journey that defies expectation and shatters every stereotype you might have held about this massive, diverse, and breathtaking land. We are diving deep into the wonders of Africa, exploring the hidden gems and the legendary landmarks that make this the most soul-stirring destination on Earth. From the shifting golden sands of the oldest desert in the world to the thunderous roar of waterfalls that can be felt in your chest before they are even seen, this is a celebration of a land that is as ancient as time and as vibrant as a heartbeat. We often hear about the challenges or the struggles, but rarely do we take the time to sit in silence and appreciate the sheer architectural genius of nature and the profound depth of human heritage that resides here. This video is your virtual passport to a world of contrast where snow-capped peaks sit not far from sun-drenched savannas and where crystal-clear turquoise waters lap against shores that have seen the rise and fall of civilizations. We are going to explore why every traveler, no matter how seasoned, eventually feels the pull of this continent calling them home. Why does Africa get under your skin in a way no other place does? We are about to find out. Kenya is one of those places that changes you. And I know that sounds like a cliche, something you read on a travel blog or hear from someone who spent 2 weeks abroad and suddenly thinks they found enlightenment. But I mean it in a very specific way. Kenya rewires something in your brain. It shifts the scale of what you think is beautiful, what you think is possible, and honestly, what you think matters. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what I mean. And if you have never seriously considered visiting Kenya before, I am willing to bet that is going to change in the next few minutes. Let me start with something that most people do not expect. When you think of Kenya, you probably picture savannas, wide open grasslands, maybe a lion or two, the golden light of an African sunset. And yes, all of that is absolutely real and absolutely stunning. But Kenya is not just one landscape. It is a country that somehow managed to collect almost every type of terrain the planet has to offer and compress it into a space roughly the size of Texas. You have tropical beaches along the Indian Ocean coastline. You have snow-capped mountains near the equator. You have dense forests, arid deserts, fertile highlands, and freshwater lakes that stretch to the horizon. The diversity is almost absurd. It is as if nature looked at Kenya and said, I am going to put everything here and see what happens. And what happened is one of the most visually spectacular countries on Earth. Let us start where most people start when they think about Kenya, and that is the wildlife. The Masai Mara National Reserve is arguably the most famous wildlife destination in the world, and there is a very good reason for that. Every year between July and October, something extraordinary takes place. Over 2 million wildebeest, along with hundreds of thousands of zebras and gazelles, make their way from the Serengeti in Tanzania northward into the Mara. This is the Great Migration, and it is considered one of the most awe-inspiring natural events on the planet. Imagine standing on a ridge and watching an endless river of animals flowing across the plains below you. The ground vibrates. The sound is overwhelming, dust rises into the air and catches the light, and everything looks like it belongs in a documentary, except you are there, standing in it, breathing it in. But the migration is just one piece of the puzzle. On any given day in the Masai Mara, you might spot lions lounging in the tall grass, cheetahs scanning the horizon for prey, elephants moving in slow, dignified herds, leopards draped over the branches of acacia trees, and hippos wallowing in the Mara River. The big five, lion, leopard, rhinoceros, elephant, and Cape buffalo, are all present here. And seeing them in the wild, in their natural habitat, not behind glass or in a zoo, is a fundamentally different experience. There is a rawness to it, a humility that settles over you when you realize you are a guest in their world. Now here is something that a lot of travelers do not know. The Masai Mara is far from the only place to see incredible wildlife in Kenya. Amboseli National Park, located at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro, offers one of the most iconic views in all of Africa. Picture this, a massive herd of elephants walking slowly across a dry lake bed, and behind them, rising dramatically from the flat terrain, is Kilimanjaro, its peak dusted with snow, its flanks wrapped in clouds. It is a photograph that practically takes itself. Amboseli is also home to over 400 species of birds, which makes it a paradise for birdwatchers. You will see everything from martial eagles to flamingos to lilac-breasted rollers, which might be the most beautiful bird I have ever seen in my life. Then there is Tsavo, which is actually split into two parks, Tsavo East and Tsavo West. Together, they form one of the largest wildlife sanctuaries in the world. Tsavo is less crowded than the Mara, which means the experience feels more intimate, more raw. Tsavo East is known for its vast plains and the Galana River, where crocodiles bask on the banks and herds of elephants come to drink. The elephants here are famous for their reddish color, which comes from the red volcanic soil they dust themselves with. Tsavo West, meanwhile, is more rugged and mountainous, with the stunning Mzima Springs, where you can actually watch hippos and fish through an underwater viewing chamber. It feels like something out of a nature documentary because it literally is. Many documentaries have been filmed here. Let me shift gears now because I promised you that Kenya is more than wildlife, and I want to deliver on that promise. Let us talk about the coast. Kenya has over 500 kilometers of Indian Ocean coastline, and it is nothing short of paradise. The beaches here are white sand fringed with palm trees, and the water is that impossible shade of turquoise that you think only exists in photo filters but is actually very real. The coastal city of Mombasa is a destination in itself. It is Kenya's second largest city and its oldest, with a history that stretches back over 1,000 years. Mombasa has been a trading port for centuries, visited by merchants from Arabia, India, Portugal, and beyond. That history is baked into the architecture, the food, the culture. The old town in Mombasa is a labyrinth of narrow streets, carved wooden doors, and buildings that blend Swahili, Arab, and European influences in ways that are completely unique. Just north of Mombasa, you will find Watamu and Malindi, two coastal towns that offer world-class snorkeling and diving. The Watamu Marine National Park protects a stunning coral reef teeming with tropical fish, sea turtles, and even the occasional whale shark. The biodiversity here is remarkable. Beneath the surface of the water, you are entering a completely different world, one that is just as rich and complex as the savannas above ground. And then there is Lamu. Lamu Island is one of the oldest and best preserved Swahili settlements in East Africa, and it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. There are no cars on Lamu, the streets are too narrow. Instead, people get around on foot or by donkey. The town has a dreamlike quality to it. Stone buildings with intricately carved wooden balconies line the waterfront. Traditional dhow sailboats drift across the harbor. The pace of life is slow and deliberate. Spending time in Lamu feels like stepping backward through centuries without losing any of the warmth and hospitality that Kenya is known for. Many visitors describe it as one of the most peaceful places they have ever been. Now let us go in the opposite direction. Let us go up. Mount Kenya is the second highest mountain in Africa, after Kilimanjaro, and it sits almost exactly on the equator. The fact that there is a snow-capped peak sitting on the equator is one of those geographical facts that seems like it cannot possibly be true, but it is. Mount Kenya is a stratovolcano that last erupted millions of years ago, and over time glaciers and erosion have sculpted its peaks into dramatic, jagged formations. Climbing Mount Kenya is a serious undertaking, but you do not have to be a mountaineer to appreciate it. The mountain is surrounded by a national park and forest reserve that is home to elephants, buffalo, leopards, and a staggering variety of bird species. The vegetation changes dramatically as you ascend, from dense bamboo forests to alpine meadows filled with giant lobelias and groundsels, plants that look like they belong on another planet. It is an alien landscape in the best possible way. And speaking of landscapes that seem otherworldly, let me tell you about the Great Rift Valley. This massive geological feature stretches from Lebanon in the north all the way down to Mozambique in the south, and Kenya sits right in the heart of it. The Rift Valley is responsible for some of Kenya's most dramatic scenery, including a chain of lakes that are each remarkable in their own right. Lake Nakuru, for instance, was once famous for hosting millions of flamingos. At its peak, the lake's shores were so densely packed with flamingos that from the air, the entire lake appeared pink. The flamingo numbers have fluctuated over the years due to changes in water levels and chemistry, but Nakuru remains a stunning destination. The national park surrounding the lake is also a sanctuary for both black and white rhinoceros, making it one of the best places in Kenya to see these critically endangered animals. Then there is Lake Naivasha, a freshwater lake that is a haven for hippos and over 400 bird species. You can take a boat ride on Lake Naivasha and find yourself within meters of hippos, which, by the way, are statistically more dangerous to humans than lions. There is something both thrilling and mildly terrifying about gliding past a hippo in a small boat, and watching it eye you with what appears to be casual indifference but could easily become something else entirely. Further north, you encounter Lake Turkana, sometimes called the Jade Sea because of its remarkable green color. Lake Turkana is the world's largest permanent desert lake and is one of the most remote and hauntingly beautiful places in Kenya. The landscape around it is barren, volcanic, almost Martian. This area is also of immense scientific importance. Some of the oldest hominid fossils ever discovered have been found near Lake Turkana, including Turkana Boy, a nearly complete skeleton of Homo erectus that is approximately 1.5 million years old. Standing near Lake Turkana, you are standing near the cradle of humanity. Our ancestors walked here. That thought alone is enough to make you pause and feel the weight of deep time pressing down on the present. Let me bring you back to the human side of Kenya now, because the landscape and wildlife are extraordinary, but the people are what truly make this country unforgettable. Kenya is home to over 40 distinct ethnic communities, each with its own language, traditions, and way of life. The most internationally recognized are the Maasai, semi-nomadic pastoralists who have inhabited the region for centuries. The Maasai are known for their distinctive red clothing, their elaborate beadwork, and their deep connection to the land and their cattle. Visiting a Maasai village is an experience that is both humbling and eye-opening. Their way of life is so different from what most of us know, yet it is sustained by a profound understanding of ecology, community, and resilience. But Kenya's cultural richness extends far beyond the Maasai. The Kikuyu, the largest ethnic group, have a rich tradition of storytelling and agriculture. The Samburu people of the north share cultural similarities with the Maasai, but have their own distinct identity. The Swahili people of the coast have built a vibrant culture that blends African, Arab, and Indian influences, and the Swahili language, which originated here, is now spoken by over 100 million people across East Africa. Nairobi itself is one of the most dynamic cities on the African continent. It is a major hub for technology, finance, and creative industries. The city has a thriving art scene, incredible restaurants, and a nightlife that can hold its own against any global capital. And just 20 minutes from downtown Nairobi, you will find Nairobi National Park, where you can watch lions and giraffes with the city skyline shimmering in the background. There is no other major city on earth where that is possible. The food in Kenya deserves its own conversation. Kenyan cuisine is diverse and deeply satisfying. Nyama choma, which translates to grilled meat, is practically a national obsession. Picture perfectly seasoned goat or beef, slow roasted over charcoal until it is tender and smoky and absolutely incredible. Ugali, a staple made from maize flour, is served alongside stews and vegetables and is the foundation of countless meals across the country. On the coast, the cuisine shifts dramatically. Here you will find biryani, samosas, and coconut-infused curries that reflect centuries of trade and cultural exchange. Freshly caught seafood, grilled and served with chapati and a squeeze of lime, is one of the simplest and most delicious meals you will ever eat. And if you have a sweet tooth, you need to try mandazi, a slightly sweet fried dough that is often served with tea and is basically the Kenyan answer to a donut, except arguably better. Kenyan tea, by the way, is world-class. Kenya is one of the largest tea exporters in the world, and the highland tea growing regions around Kericho produce some of the finest black tea you will ever taste. Visiting a tea plantation is a surprisingly serene experience. The rolling green hills covered in neat rows of tea bushes are visually stunning, and the fresh air at that altitude is invigorating. I want to take a moment to address something that I think holds a lot of people back from visiting Kenya, and that is safety. Like any country, Kenya has its challenges. There are areas where caution is advised, and it is always smart to travel with awareness and preparation. But the vast majority of tourists who visit Kenya have safe, incredible, life-changing experiences. The tourism infrastructure in Kenya is well developed. There are lodges and camps ranging from rustic to ultra-luxurious. Guides are knowledgeable and experienced, and the Kenyan people, almost universally, are welcoming and generous to visitors. The phrase Hakuna Matata, which the whole world learned from a certain animated movie, is actually a real Swahili expression used in Kenya. It means no worries, and while life is obviously not without its worries for anyone anywhere, the spirit behind that phrase, a relaxed optimism, a willingness to find joy, is genuinely embedded in the culture. Let me tell you about one more place that I think encapsulates the magic of Kenya, and that is the Laikipia Plateau. This area, located north of Mount Kenya, is one of the most important wildlife conservation regions in the country. What makes Laikipia special is that much of the conservation here is community-driven. Local communities, private ranches, and conservancies work together to protect wildlife while also supporting the livelihoods of the people who live there. Staying at a conservancy in Laikipia means that your visit directly contributes to conservation and community development. It also means you get experiences that are impossible in the larger, more popular parks. Night game drives, walking safaris guided by local experts, and the chance to see rare species like Grevy's zebra and wild dogs. Laikipia represents the future of sustainable tourism, and experiencing it firsthand gives you hope that conservation and development can coexist. There's also something I have not mentioned yet, and it might seem like a small detail, but it matters. The light in Kenya is different. I do not know how else to describe it. Something about the equatorial sun, the altitude, the quality of the air creates a light that makes everything look more vivid, more alive. Photographers talk about the golden hour, that brief period around sunrise and sunset when everything is bathed in warm, soft light. In Kenya, the golden hour seems to last longer. Sunrises and sunsets here are not just beautiful, they are theatrical. The sky turns shades of orange and pink and purple that seem impossible. And because the landscapes are so vast and open, you see the full arc of the sky from horizon to horizon. It is the kind of beauty that makes you set down your camera because you realize no photograph is going to capture what you are actually seeing and feeling. I have been talking for a while now, and I realize I could keep going. I have not even mentioned the Aberdare Mountains with their waterfalls and misty forests. I have not talked about Hell's Gate National Park where you can actually cycle among zebras and giraffes. I have not described the Chalby Desert in the north, one of the most remote and stark landscapes in East Africa. I have not covered the incredible marathon runners who come from the highlands around Eton and Eldoret, who have dominated long-distance running for decades and turned Kenya into a legend in the world of athletics. There is so much to say about this country that any single video can only scratch the surface. But let me try to bring this all together with something that I think captures the essence of why Kenya is special. There is a concept in Swahili called pole pole. It means slowly, slowly. It is a reminder to take your time, to not rush through life, to be present in the moment. And I think that is the greatest gift that Kenya offers a visitor. In a world that is constantly accelerating, constantly demanding your attention, constantly pulling you toward the next thing, Kenya asks you to slow down. To sit quietly at dawn and watch the sun rise over the savannah. To listen to the sound of the wind in the acacia trees, to watch a herd of elephants move across the landscape with a patience and grace that makes our human hurrying seem absurd. To sit on a beach and let the sound of the Indian Ocean waves rewrite whatever anxious narrative has been running in your head. Kenya does not just show you beautiful things. It teaches you how to see, it recalibrates your sense of wonder, and once that recalibration happens, it does not go away. You carry it with you. Every sunrise looks a little different after you have seen one in the Mara. Every meal tastes a little more meaningful after you have shared nyama choma with new friends in Nairobi. Every moment of quiet feels a little more precious after you have experienced the vast silence of the Rift Valley. That is what I meant at the beginning when I said Kenya changes you. It is not some vague mystical transformation. It is specific. It is a shift in your attention, in what you value, in how you experience the ordinary moments of your life after you have been immersed in something truly extraordinary. Tanzania is one of those places that will completely rewrap your understanding of what it means to be alive on this planet. And I know that sounds dramatic. I know that sounds like something every travel creator says about every destination, but stick with me for the next few minutes because I'm going to walk you through a country so staggeringly beautiful, so rich in culture, so packed with once-in-a-lifetime experiences that by the end of this video, you will either be booking a flight or you will be lying awake tonight wondering why you have not booked a flight yet. Let me start with a confession. Before I really dove into researching Tanzania, I thought I had a decent understanding of East Africa. I had seen the documentaries, I had scrolled through the Instagram posts, I figured I knew what to expect. Sweeping savannas, some wildlife, maybe a beach or two. And I could not have been more wrong. Tanzania is not just a destination. It is an entire universe compressed into a single country. We are talking about the highest peak on the African continent, the largest caldera in the world, islands that look like they were painted by someone who had never seen an ugly thing in their entire life, and wildlife migrations so massive they are literally visible from space. This is not a place you visit. This is a place that visits you, that gets under your skin, and rewire something fundamental in how you see the world. So let us begin this journey, and I want to take you through Tanzania the way it deserves to be experienced. Not as a checklist of tourist spots, but as a story. A story of Earth, of animals, of people, and of moments that make you stop breathing for a second because you simply cannot believe what your eyes are seeing. We have to start with the icon. We have to start with Kilimanjaro. Mount Kilimanjaro stands at roughly 19,341 feet above sea level. That makes it the tallest freestanding mountain on the planet. And I want you to really sit with that for a moment because this is not part of some massive mountain range like the Himalayas or the Andes. This thing just rises out of relatively flat terrain like the Earth decided to build a skyscraper in the middle of a parking lot. It is absurd. It is magnificent. And it draws tens of thousands of climbers every single year from all over the world. Now here is what makes Kilimanjaro truly special beyond just its height. When you climb this mountain, you do not just change altitude, you change worlds. At the base, you start in lush tropical rainforest. The air is thick and warm and everything around you is impossibly green. As you ascend, that forest gives way to heathland and moorland, these eerie landscapes full of giant ground cell plants that look like something from another planet. Go higher still, and you hit an alpine desert where almost nothing grows, where the air gets thin and the temperature drops and the landscape becomes stark and lunar. And then, at the very top, you reach the Arctic zone. Glaciers and ice fields sitting right on the equator. Think about that. You are practically on the equator and you are standing on ice. In the span of a few days of hiking, you experience nearly every climate zone on Earth. That is not just a mountain. That is a time machine through ecosystems. But Kilimanjaro is also a story of change. Those glaciers I just mentioned, they are disappearing. Scientists estimate that the ice cap on Kilimanjaro has lost more than 80% of its mass over the last century. Some projections suggest the glaciers could be gone entirely within the next couple of decades. So when people climb Kilimanjaro today, they are not just conquering a peak. They are witnessing something that future generations may never get to see. There is a weight to that, there is an urgency. And it adds a layer of emotional depth to the experience that transforms it from a physical challenge into something almost spiritual. Now let us come down from the mountain and head to a place that, for my money, might be the single most awe-inspiring landscape in all of Africa. I am talking about the Ngorongoro crater. This is a caldera, which means it is the collapsed rim of an ancient volcano. And it is enormous. We are talking about a natural amphitheater that stretches roughly 12 miles across and sits about 2,000 feet deep. The floor of this crater covers over 100 square miles, and within that space lives one of the densest concentrations of wildlife anywhere on the planet. Imagine standing on the rim of this crater for the first time. You look down and you see this vast, self-contained world below you. There are grasslands and forests and a lake and marshes, and scattered across all of it are thousands upon thousands of animals. Lions, elephants, buffalo, hippos, zebras, wildebeest, and if you are incredibly fortunate, the critically endangered black rhinoceros. The crater acts like a natural enclosure, not because the animals cannot leave. Many of them do move in and out, but because the conditions inside are so perfect that many simply choose to stay. The water supply is reliable, the grazing is excellent, and the whole ecosystem functions like a finely tuned machine that has been running for millions of years. What strikes most people about Ngorongoro is the intimacy of it. On the open plains of the Serengeti, wildlife can feel distant, spread across an impossibly vast canvas. But in the crater, everything feels closer. The animals are more concentrated, the encounters are more frequent. You might watch a pride of lions lounging in the grass while a herd of elephants moves past in the background, and a flamingo-covered lake shimmers behind them. It is like someone designed the ultimate wildlife viewing experience and then decided to put walls around it just to make sure you did not miss anything. And speaking of the Serengeti, we need to talk about it. Because if Ngorongoro is a jewel box, the Serengeti is the entire treasure vault. The Serengeti National Park covers roughly 5,700 square miles of grassland, woodland, and riverine forest. It is one of the oldest and most scientifically significant ecosystems on Earth. The archaeological record here stretches back millions of years. This is land where early humans walked. This is land that has been shaped and reshaped by the rhythms of migration and predation and rainfall for longer than civilization has existed. And the centerpiece of the Serengeti experience, the thing that makes it unlike any other place you will ever visit, is the Great Migration. Every year, roughly 1.5 to 2 million wildebeest, along with hundreds of thousands of zebras and gazelles, make a massive circular journey through the Serengeti ecosystem and into Kenya's Masai Mara and back again. They follow the rains. They follow the grass. And along the way, they face rivers teeming with crocodiles, open plains patrolled by lions and cheetahs, and the simple, brutal arithmetic of survival that governs every moment of their existence. The river crossings are what most people picture when they think of the Great Migration, and for good reason. These events are absolutely heart-stopping. Thousands of wildebeest gather on the banks of the Mara River or the Grumeti River, building courage, jostling, hesitating. Then one brave or perhaps foolish individual takes the plunge, and the floodgates open. Bodies pour into the water in a chaotic, desperate rush. Crocodiles strike. The current pulls. Some animals make it across. Some do not. And on the other side, the survivors scramble up the muddy banks and keep walking because stopping is not an option. It is nature at its most raw, its most honest, and its most humbling. But here is something people do not always realize about the Great Migration. It is not just one event. It is a year-round cycle. The wildebeest are always moving. In the southern Serengeti, during the early months of the year, the herds gather on the short grass plains for calving season. Hundreds of thousands of baby wildebeest are born within a few weeks of each other, a survival strategy designed to overwhelm predators through sheer numbers. It is chaotic and beautiful and heartbreaking all at once. Then as the dry season approaches, the herds begin their northward march, and the whole dramatic journey begins again. Let me shift gears now and take you to a place that represents a completely different side of Tanzania, a side that many people overlook entirely because they are so focused on the safari experience. I want to take you to Zanzibar. Zanzibar is an archipelago off the coast of mainland Tanzania, and it is one of those places that feels like it belongs in a dream. The main island, Unguja, which most people simply call Zanzibar, is famous for its beaches, and rightfully so. The sand is white. The water transitions through every shade of blue and turquoise you can imagine. The palm trees sway in a warm ocean breeze that carries the scent of spices and salt. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most beautiful coastal environments in the world. But Zanzibar is so much more than its beaches. Stonetown, the old quarter of Zanzibar City, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it is absolutely mesmerizing. The streets are narrow and winding, lined with buildings that reflect centuries of cultural exchange between African, Arab, Indian, and European influences. Massive carved wooden doors, some of them hundreds of years old, guard the entrances to homes and former palaces. The architecture tells the story of a place that was once the epicenter of the East African spice trade, and, more darkly, a major hub in the Indian Ocean slave trade. Walking through Stonetown is like walking through layers of history. Every corner reveals something: a hidden courtyard, a crumbling mosque, a rooftop restaurant where you can watch the sun set over the Indian Ocean while the call to prayer echoes through the streets below. And then there are the spices. Zanzibar is called the Spice Island for a reason. Cloves, nutmeg, cinnamon, black pepper, vanilla, lemongrass. These are not just products here. They are part of the identity of the place. You can visit spice farms where guides will walk you through the plantations, handing you fresh spices to smell and taste, explaining how each one is grown and harvested and used. It is a sensory experience unlike anything else. The aromas are overwhelming in the best possible way, and you leave understanding why these tiny islands once attracted the attention of empires. Now, I want to take you somewhere that most travel videos skip over entirely, and honestly, that is a shame because it might be one of the most visually striking places in all of Tanzania. I am talking about Lake Natron. This lake sits in the northern part of the country, near the border with Kenya, at the base of an active volcano called Ol Duinyo Lengai. And Lake Natron looks like it belongs on Mars. The water is extremely alkaline, with a pH that can reach above 12, and temperatures that can exceed 60 degrees Celsius, that is about 140 degrees Fahrenheit, near the hot spring inflows. The high mineral content gives the lake a surreal reddish-pink color that intensifies during the dry season, creating a landscape that looks almost alien. Most creatures cannot survive in these conditions, but lesser flamingos thrive here. Lake Natron is actually the primary breeding ground for the lesser flamingo in East Africa. Roughly 75% of the world's lesser flamingos are born at this lake. The extreme conditions that make it uninhabitable for most life forms actually protect the flamingos from predators. They nest on salt flats that are too hot and too caustic for most animals to cross. It is a brilliant survival strategy, building your nursery in a place that would kill almost anything else that tried to get there. The area around Lake Natron is also home to the Maasai people, and this brings me to something I want to spend some time on because it is essential to understanding Tanzania. The human element, the cultural richness. Tanzania is home to over 120 ethnic groups, each with its own language, traditions, and way of life. The Maasai are perhaps the most well-known internationally, famous for their distinctive red clothing, their cattle-herding lifestyle, and their incredible jumping dance known as adumu. But the Maasai are just one thread in an incredibly complex cultural tapestry. There are the Hadza, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer tribes on Earth who live near Lake Eyasi and still hunt with bows and arrows and forage for wild berries and tubers just as their ancestors did thousands of years ago. There are the Chaga people who live on the slopes of Kilimanjaro and have developed sophisticated irrigation systems to farm the mountain's fertile volcanic soil. There are the Sukuma, the largest ethnic group, primarily farmers and herders in the region south of Lake Victoria. What connects all these different groups is a shared national identity that was deliberately cultivated after independence. Tanzania gained its independence from Britain in 1961, and its first president, Julius Nyerere, made a conscious decision to promote Swahili as the national language as a way to unify the country's diverse population. That decision was transformative. Unlike many other African nations where colonial languages remained dominant, Tanzania embraced Swahili as a source of national pride and cohesion. Today, Swahili is spoken by virtually everyone in the country, serving as a bridge between communities that might otherwise have little in common. It is one of the reasons Tanzania has enjoyed a level of internal peace and stability that is remarkable for the region. And Swahili itself is a beautiful language. The greetings alone can take several minutes as people inquire about each other's health, families, and general well-being. There is a warmth and a rhythm to Swahili that reflects the culture it comes from. The word safari, which has been adopted into English to mean a wildlife viewing trip, actually just means journey in Swahili. And that feels right, because everything about Tanzania is a journey. Let me take you to one more natural wonder before we start to wrap up, and this one is a hidden gem that deserves far more attention than it gets. The Selous Game Reserve, now officially known as the Nyerere National Park after it was redesignated in honor of the country's founding father. This is one of the largest protected areas in Africa, covering an area roughly the size of Switzerland. Let that sink in. A single park, the size of an entire European country. What makes the Selous special is its wildness. The Serengeti is incredible, but it gets significant tourist traffic. The Selous is different. Much of the reserve is remote, difficult to access, and relatively unvisited. This means the wildlife encounters here feel more raw, more authentic. You are not watching animals that have become habituated to dozens of safari vehicles. You are seeing truly wild animals in a truly wild landscape. The Rufiji River, which cuts through the reserve, is one of the great waterways of Africa, and boat safaris along its channels offer a perspective on wildlife that you simply cannot get from a vehicle. Hippos surface and submerge. Crocodiles bask on sandbars, elephants wade through the shallows, fish eagles cry overhead. It is a primordial scene, ancient and unchanged. The Selous is also known for its population of African wild dogs, one of the continent's most endangered large carnivores. These are fascinating animals, highly social, incredibly efficient hunters, and absolutely gorgeous with their mottled coats of black, brown, white, and gold. Seeing a pack of wild dogs on the hunt is one of the greatest wildlife spectacles in Africa, and the Selous is one of the best places in the world to experience it. Now, as we come toward the end of this journey through Tanzania, I want to step back and talk about something that ties all of these places and experiences together. It is the feeling you get when you are actually there, standing on Tanzanian soil, breathing Tanzanian air, looking out at a Tanzanian horizon. There is something about this country that quiets the noise in your head. In our regular lives, we are bombarded with information, with notifications, with deadlines and obligations, and the constant low-grade anxiety of modern existence. Tanzania strips all of that away when you are watching a sunset over the Serengeti and the sky turns into this impossible canvas of orange and purple and gold, and the silhouettes of acacia trees stand like sentinels against the fading light. And somewhere in the distance, a lion roars, and the sound carries across the plains. In that moment, nothing else exists. Your phone does not matter. Your inbox does not matter. The only thing that matters is the raw, overwhelming beauty of being a living creature on a living planet. And I think that is ultimately what makes Tanzania one of the great wonders of the world. It is not just the individual attractions, as extraordinary as they are, it is the cumulative effect. It is the way Kilimanjaro at dawn makes you feel small in the best possible way. It is the way a baby elephant stumbling through the grass in Ngorongoro makes you laugh out loud with pure, uncomplicated joy. It is the way the spice-scented alleys of Stone Town make you feel like you have stepped through a portal into another century. It is the way a Maasai elder sharing stories around a fire makes you realize that wisdom does not require technology or degrees. It requires attention and time and a deep connection to the land. Uganda is one of those places that completely rewrites everything you thought you knew about Africa. And I need you to hear me out on this because by the end of this video, you are going to be seriously questioning why this country is not on everyone's bucket list. I traveled to Uganda expecting beautiful landscapes. What I got instead was a life-changing experience that I genuinely cannot stop thinking about. Let me paint you a picture. You wake up in the morning and the air smells like rain-soaked earth and wild jasmine. You step outside your tent and there is mist rolling over volcanic mountains so green they almost look unreal. Somewhere in the distance, a bird you have never heard before is calling out across a valley that stretches further than your eyes can follow. And then someone hands you a cup of Ugandan coffee. And honestly, at that point, the day has already peaked and it is only 6 in the morning. But here's the thing. That is just the beginning. Uganda packs more natural wonders into its borders than countries 3 times its size. We are talking about the source of the longest river on Earth. We are talking about mountains with snow on the equator. We are talking about half the world's remaining mountain gorillas living in misty forests that feel like something out of a fantasy novel. And somehow, almost nobody is talking about this place. So today, I am going to take you on a journey through the wonders of Uganda. We are going to cover everything from the thundering waterfalls to the sprawling savannas to the hidden lakes and the incredible wildlife. And I promise you, by the time we are done, you are going to want to book a flight. Let us start with what might be the single most extraordinary wildlife experience available on this planet. I am talking about mountain gorilla trekking in windy impenetrable forests. Now, I have done a lot of wildlife encounters in my life. I have watched lions hunt in the Serengeti, I have snorkeled with whale sharks, I have sat in a hide watching leopards at night, but nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to sitting 3 meters away from a silverback mountain gorilla and having him look you directly in the eyes. Buwindi. Impenetrable forest lives up to its name. This place is dense. We are talking about one of the oldest rainforests in Africa, estimated to be around 25,000 years old. The canopy is so thick that sunlight barely reaches the forest floor in some places. Vines tangle around ancient trees, the ground is muddy and steep, and your legs burn after the first hour of hiking, but every single step is worth it. There are roughly 1,000 mountain gorillas left in the wild, and about half of them live right here in Uganda, split between Bwindi and the Virunga volcanic range along the border with Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. When you finally find a gorilla family after sometimes 2 or 3 hours of trekking through the undergrowth, the world just stops. These are not animals behind glass, there is no barrier. You are in their home. The silverback I encountered was enormous, easily 400 pounds of pure muscle covered in coarse black fur, with that distinctive silver saddle across his back that marks him as the dominant male. He was sitting in a clearing pulling bamboo shoots apart with his massive hands, and occasionally glancing over at our small group of 8 visitors, as if to say, I know you are there, and I am not particularly bothered. Around him juveniles played and tumbled. A mother nursed an infant so small it could fit in your 2 hands. The baby stared at us with huge brown eyes full of curiosity. You get 1 hour with the gorillas, 60 minutes, and let me tell you, those 60 minutes will redefine how you think about wildlife, about nature, about our connection to other species. Mountain gorillas share about 98% of our DNA, and when you look into their eyes, you feel that connection in your bones. It is profoundly emotional. Multiple people in my group were in tears, and I'm not going to pretend I was not one of them. Now permits for gorilla trekking cost around $700 in Uganda, which is actually significantly less than what you would pay in neighboring Rwanda, where they charge over $1,500. And that money goes directly toward conservation and community development. It is one of those rare tourism experiences where you genuinely feel good about every dollar you spend. But Bwindi is not the only place in Uganda where you can have extraordinary primate encounters. Let us talk about Kibale Forest National Park, which holds the title of the primate capital of the world. And this is where you go for chimpanzee tracking, and Kibale is home to around 1,500 chimpanzees, making it one of the largest populations in East Africa. And tracking chimps is a completely different experience from gorilla trekking. Chimpanzees are louder, they are more energetic, they are more unpredictable. You hear them before you see them. The forest erupts with screaming and hooting that echoes through the trees, and your heart starts pounding because you know they are close. And then suddenly you look up, and there they are swinging through the branches above you, grooming each other, cracking nuts with rocks, playing, fighting, doing all the things that make chimps endlessly fascinating to watch. Beyond chimps, Kibale is home to 12 other primate species, including red colobus monkeys, L'Hoest's monkeys, gray-cheeked mangabeys, and the tiny nocturnal potto. Walking through this forest feels like being inside a nature documentary, except there are no camera crews and no narration. It is just you and the primates and the ancient trees. Let us shift gears now, because Uganda is not just about forests and primates. This country has some of the most spectacular landscapes in all of Africa, and one of the most mind-blowing is the Rwenzori Mountains. These are sometimes called the Mountains of the Moon, and that name is perfect because they look like they belong on another world. The Rwenzori Range sits right on the equator, and yet the highest peaks are permanently covered in glaciers and snow. Let that sink in. Snow on the equator. The tallest peak, Margarita Peak, stands at 5,109 meters, making it the third highest point in Africa after Kilimanjaro and Mount Kenya. But many experienced mountaineers actually consider the Rwenzori a more challenging and more rewarding climb than Kilimanjaro because the terrain is so varied and the weather is so unpredictable. As you ascend through the different vegetation zones, the landscape transforms in ways that defy imagination. You start in tropical rainforests, then you move into bamboo zones. Then comes the heather zone, where everything is draped in moss and the trees look like something Dr. Seuss would draw. Higher still, you enter the alpine zone, where giant lobelias and groundsels grow to enormous sizes. These are plants that on lower ground might reach your knee, but up here they tower over you at 5 or 6 meters tall. It is genuinely surreal. Scientists believe these giant plants evolved their unusual size as an adaptation to the extreme conditions at high altitude near the equator, where you get blazing sun during the day and freezing temperatures at night. The Rwenzori are one of Africa's best-kept secrets. Very few tourists make it here compared to Kilimanjaro, and that means you can have entire valleys to yourself. The silence up there is extraordinary. You can hear glacial streams trickling down from the ice caps and the wind moving through those bizarre giant plants, and honestly, it feels like you have stepped back in time 1,000,000 years. Now let us come back down to lower elevations and talk about one of Uganda's crown jewels, Murchison Falls. If you want to see the raw, unstoppable power of nature, there is no better place than this. The Victoria Nile, one of the major tributaries of the Nile River, forces its entire volume through a gap in the rocks that is only about 7 meters wide before exploding downward in a 43-meter drop. The sheer force of water squeezing through that narrow opening creates a spectacle that is almost violent in its beauty. The spray rises dozens of meters into the air. The roar is so loud you cannot hear the person standing next to you. Rainbows form and dissolve and reform in the mist. You can experience Murchison Falls from both the top and the bottom. From the top, you stand at the edge and watch the water rage beneath you, which is terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. From the bottom, you take a boat cruise up the Nile toward the base of the falls, and along the way the riverbanks are lined with some of the most incredible wildlife viewing in East Africa. Hippos by the hundreds, massive Nile crocodiles basking on the banks, elephants coming down to drink, buffalo, waterbuck, and birds. So many birds. Uganda is one of the top birding destinations on the planet, with over 1,000 species recorded, and the area around Murchison Falls is particularly rich. Murchison Falls National Park itself is Uganda's largest national park, and it offers classic savanna safari experiences. You can do game drives across open grasslands dotted with acacia trees and spot lions, leopards, giraffes, and the elusive shoebill stork, which is honestly one of the weirdest and most wonderful birds you will ever see. The shoebill looks like it was designed by committee. It has this enormous shoe-shaped bill, hence the name. And it stands perfectly still in swamps for hours waiting to strike at fish with lightning speed. Birders travel from around the world specifically to see this bird, and Uganda is one of the best places to find it. Speaking of water, let us talk about Lake Victoria. This is the largest lake in Africa and the second largest freshwater lake in the world by surface area. It is so vast that when you stand on its shores, you cannot see the other side. It looks like an ocean. 3 countries share Lake Victoria: Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, but Uganda's portion includes some of the most beautiful and culturally significant areas. The Sissi Islands are an archipelago of 84 islands scattered across the northwestern part of Lake Victoria. Some are tiny uninhabited dots of green. Others, like Bugala Island, have small communities, sandy beaches, and a relaxed tropical atmosphere that feels completely different from anywhere else in Uganda. The pace of life on the Sissi Islands is slow and gentle. Fishermen head out in wooden boats at dawn, children play on beaches shaded by palm trees. The sunsets over the lake are some of the most spectacular I have ever witnessed, with the sky turning shades of orange and purple and gold that seem almost artificially saturated, except they are completely real. But Lake Victoria is also the source of the White Nile. And that brings us to Jinja, a town that sits right where the Nile begins its incredible journey northward through South Sudan, and Egypt, before finally reaching the Mediterranean Sea thousands of kilometers away. Standing at the source of the Nile is a powerful moment. You are looking at the birthplace of a river that has shaped human civilization for millennia. Ancient Egypt. The pharaohs, the pyramids. All of it was made possible by the waters that start right here in Uganda. Jinja has also become Uganda's adventure capital. Whitewater rafting on the Nile here is world class. The rapids range from grade 3 to grade 5, and the setting is absolutely stunning, with lush green banks and tropical birds flying overhead as you crash through waves. You can also go bungee jumping, kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding, and horseback riding along the riverbanks. It is a completely different side of Uganda from the gorilla trekking and safari experiences, and it shows just how diverse this country really is. Now, I want to take you somewhere that might be the most visually striking place in all of Uganda. Queen Elizabeth National Park. This park stretches across the western branch of the Great Rift Valley, and it contains an almost absurd variety of landscapes. You have got open savanna, tropical forest, wetlands, crater lakes, and the Kazinga Channel, a 32-kilometer natural waterway that connects Lake Edward to Lake George. A boat cruise along the Kazinga Channel is one of those experiences that should be on every traveler's must-do list. The concentration of wildlife along the banks is staggering. You will see more hippos in one boat trip than most people see in a lifetime. Elephants wade in the shallows, buffalo herds stretch along the shoreline, huge monitor lizards sun themselves on rocks. And overhead, fish eagles call with that distinctive haunting cry that is basically the soundtrack of African waterways. But Queen Elizabeth National Park has another trick up its sleeve. The Ashasha sector in the southern part of the park is one of only 2 places in Africa where you can reliably see tree-climbing lions. Yes, lions that climb trees and drape themselves over the branches like oversized house cats. Nobody is entirely sure why the lions here developed this behavior. Some theories suggest they climb to escape the heat or to avoid tsetse, flies on the ground, or to get a better vantage point for spotting prey. Whatever the reason, it is an unforgettable sight. Imagine driving along a dusty track and your guide suddenly stops and points to a fig tree, and there, draped across the branches, are 3 lionesses sleeping in the dappled sunlight with their paws and tails hanging down. It looks like a painting. I also need to mention Lake Bunyonyi, because it is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Period. Full stop. Lake Bunyonyi sits in the southwestern highlands near the Rwanda border, and it is surrounded by steep, terraced hillsides that rise dramatically from the water's edge. The lake is dotted with 29 small islands, each with its own story and character. The water is deep and clear, and remarkably, it is one of the few lakes in Uganda that is free of bilharzia and crocodiles, making it safe to swim in. The name Bunyonyi means place of many little birds, and it lives up to that name with weaver birds, herons, kingfishers, and countless other species filling the air with color and song. You can explore the lake by dugout canoe, gliding silently between the islands, while the reflections of the green hills shimmer in the water below you. There are community walks where local villagers share their traditions and daily life. There are cliff jumping spots for the adventurous, and there are quiet lodges perched on hillsides where you can simply sit and watch the light change over the lake as the day progresses. Let me talk about something that does not get enough attention when people discuss Uganda, and that is the culture. The wildlife and landscapes rightfully get the spotlight, but Uganda's cultural richness is equally extraordinary. There are over 50 different ethnic groups in Uganda, each with distinct languages, traditions, music, and dance. The Baganda people of the central region have a sophisticated kingdom with a long history. The Karamojong in the northeast are pastoralists whose way of life has remained largely unchanged for centuries. The Batwa people, who were the original forest-dwelling inhabitants of the areas around Bwindi, have a deeply moving story of displacement and resilience. Ugandan food deserves its own spotlight too. The staple dish is matoke, steamed green bananas that are mashed into a thick paste and typically served with groundnut sauce or meat stews. Rolex is not just a watch brand in Uganda, it is a beloved street food consisting of a chapati rolled around an omelet with vegetables. The name is a play on rolled eggs. Ugandan coffee is increasingly recognized as some of the finest in the world, particularly the Arabica varieties grown on the slopes of Mount Elgon. And the local gin scene is growing rapidly with distillers using indigenous botanicals. The warmth of the Ugandan people is something that every visitor comments on. There is a reason Uganda is called the Pearl of Africa, a phrase originally attributed to Winston Churchill after he visited in the early 1900s. The hospitality is genuine and deeply felt. People go out of their way to welcome you, to share their stories, and to make you feel at home. I lost count of the number of times a complete stranger invited me to sit down and share a meal, or insisted on walking me somewhere to make sure I did not get lost. Now let me address the elephant in the room, or rather the question that might be in your mind right now. Is Uganda safe for tourists? The short answer is yes. Uganda has made enormous strides in stability and security over the past 2 decades. The main tourist areas are well established and well managed. Like any travel destination, you should exercise common sense and stay informed. But Uganda is welcoming tourists in growing numbers, and the tourism infrastructure improves every year. New lodges are opening, roads are being upgraded, guides are among the best trained in Africa. The best time to visit Uganda is during the dry seasons, which run from December to February and from June to August. These months offer the best conditions for gorilla trekking and game drives. However, Uganda is a year-round destination. The wet seasons bring their own magic with lush green landscapes, fewer tourists, and lower prices. Getting around Uganda typically involves a combination of domestic flights and road transfers. The country is not enormous, which means you can cover a lot of ground in a 2-week trip. A classic itinerary might start in the capital Kampala, head southwest to Bwindi for gorilla trekking, continue to Queen Elizabeth National Park, visit Lake Bunyonyi, then head north to Murchison Falls before finishing in Jinja for some adventure activities. That kind of route gives you an incredible cross-section of everything Uganda has to offer. Do you want to see the most unreal places on Earth? Watch this video right here. From breathtaking landscapes and hidden gems, to places that honestly don't even look real, this journey will completely blow your mind. These are some of the most beautiful, unique, and unforgettable destinations you'll ever see. And every location gets more incredible than the last. See you there.